Hello everyone, today we're going to be analysing If by Rudyard Kipling in 9 minutes or less. Let's get straight into it. So, If is a poem about the ideal traits and attributes you need in order to live life as a man. It's written as a piece of advice from a man to his son. It plays on traditional Victorian British ideals about being a hard worker, being stoic. Being stoic or stoicism is essentially remaining calm and rational and unemotional in the face of adversity and challenge. So, let's get straight into the stanzas. So throughout the poem we get anaphora, where almost all of the lines begin with if. The fact there are so many ifs serves to reflect just how difficult it is to live life as a perfect person. Kipling also uses direct address at the start with the pronoun you. So he's talking to us as readers. This isn't just one conversation between a guy and his son, it's for all of us to take on board as readers. We then get this metaphor, or you could also refer to it as an idiom, keep your head. This means to remain calm. Here Kipling tells us to remain calm even when others can't. In this first stanza, Kipling repeatedly rephrases certain verbs for an effect. So, trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating. It puts us in the middle ground. We don't want to fall into any extreme, right? So he uses those words and rephrases those verbs to serve as a direct contrast. What we do want to be, what we don't want to be the ideal person. Final line of the stanza begins with and yet. This stanza feels really overwhelming. There's lots of ifs, lots of things we need to do, all in the first stanza. So to have this sort of continuous language on the last line kind of suggests that being the perfect person is somewhat impossible to achieve. And yet, don't look too good either, nor talk too wise. It's constant. If we go on to the second stanza now, the first two lines, he uses dashes to precede the solutions that we must strive towards. So he says, if you can dream and if you can think, these dashes place emphasis on the following solutions, one of which is to not make dreams your master. This is a use of personification. It highlights how dreams and aspirations can be quite dangerous and they can take too much power over you. And throughout this poem, you'll see lots of personification being used. Another example is pretty quickly after, where we see meet with triumph and disaster. So not only is this a personification through the verb meet, obviously you can't meet triumph and disaster, but note how those words are also capitalized. The fact these are personified kind of depicts these two emotional experiences of triumph and disaster as very impactful, very powerful. They're referred to as imposters in the line after, which kind of suggests they are emotional experiences to be wary of. Some noteworthy context also is that these two lines are actually above the players' entrance at Wimbledon, the tennis tournament. So these lines seem to exemplify British ideals of good sportsmanship and stoicism, which Kipling was a big believer in. And then we then have this metaphor of the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools. A knave is basically like a deceptive person. So Kipling's kind of warning how people can misuse your words to anger or sort of bait or rage bait others, if you will. So that's something we need to be wary of, right? It's like making a trap, basically. Or watch the things you gave your life to broken. This sandwiching of broken between these two commas sort of emphasizes how heart-wrenching an experience might be where you dedicate your life to something and then it all just falls apart, whether that be a career, a family, a marriage, whatever it might be. Things you've, in this case, metaphorically built can go wrong. Kipling then sort of uses this metaphor of build them up with worn out tools to highlight how you have to keep going and persevere even if you aren't the strongest or the sharpest or you're tired or you're not working with the best resources, which is what is implied by worn out. The penultimate stanza then talks about gambling as a metaphor for taking risks. So obviously don't gamble, but Kipling is basically saying you will be a true man if you are able to heap all your winnings, risk it, and lose, and then start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. In other words, you should take risks, but be prepared to fail. And the key part of it all is to stay persistent, to not give up, and to be stoic by not complaining or living in the despair of any failure you come across. And then we get this anaphora of and, which sort of reflects how an ideal man must remain persistent and determined. It makes us feel like even reading it, we're being determined. And this, and this, and this. Kipling then breaks down the next line into a triplet of synecdoches. So synecdoche, for those of you who don't know, is essentially where you describe something or someone as like a part rather than the thing or person as a whole. So in this instance, Kipling could have said, if you can force yourself, serve your turn. Instead, he says, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew. A sinew is basically like a tendon. So this synecdoche kind of highlights how you have to use every fibre of your being to remain dedicated and to hold on, which is what Kipling repeats here. And this idea of needing to hold on is used as dialogue through the personification of will, which is kind of clever because will is obviously actually a name, not just a thing like willpower. Although I'm not sure how popular the shortening of William was at the time. I'm not sure how many people actually said will in the early 1900s, but either way, it's a personification. And this personification of having willpower indicates how strong that can be for us as a tool for humans, right? Having the will to get past something difficult is almost as strong as having a whole other person inside of you willing you to go on. Then we go to the final stanza. We start here with contrasting language again. Talk with crowds versus walk with kings. So Kipling kind of highlighting once again the importance of staying middle grounded and not falling into one extreme or the other. No matter who you're around, whether it's the common man in the crowds or the superior person like kings, you should stay true to yourself. You shouldn't sway with the crowd or try to camouflage in with people you're with, basically, nor lose the common touch. He also warns against having really overly strong connections with friends, because if people can hurt you, then you may be too emotionally attached. And then also not having foes, not having enemies. Then he gives us this final personification. So this time the personification of time with the line, the unforgiving minute. In other words, time is merciless. You can never get it back. So you may as well live it to the absolute fullest, which is then demonstrated by the following metaphor with 60 seconds worth of distance run, right? If you've got an unforgiving minute, do it to the fullest, run. And then he uses this hyperbole, yours is the earth. Right, if you can do all this, if you can follow the advice in the poem, that is the potential rewards, the earth, all of the earth. And then straight after, we get told, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Which is more here is sandwiched by dashes. Once again, he does the sandwiching a couple of times in the poem. It's sandwiched by the dashes, which precedes the phrase, you'll be a man. And that kind of emphasizes how the following phrase, being a man, supersedes any material rewards you get from the earth, which is the metaphor he uses. Being a true man is, or true human, is the true reward, basically. And the capitalization of man creates a significant importance, almost godlike, in the way God is capitalized when referring to the Christian God, whereas if you said a God, not a specific God, it wouldn't be capitalized. So it's this big, strong importance. This isn't just any man you're striving to be, it's the ideal person. However, of course, once again, if we remind ourselves, the anaphora of if throughout the poem kind of suggests or asks the question, how possible is it to achieve this status with so many ifs on the line? It appears to be extremely difficult to tick all the boxes in the poem, and it seems to be something Kipling is suggesting we should strive towards, rather than something you could reasonably expect to achieve. The bar he sets is extremely high. So that was If by Rudyard Kipling, analysed in 9 minutes or less. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Until the next one, bye for now.